But yes, we are. You haven't been around in a long time, and based on the last
a minute.
People know what's been going on, but we're turning this ship around, people. We're giving the people what they want and consistency.
There you go.
And today, another a weird day in our time. It is, almost election time. Early ballots have begun.
I believe almost 12 million people have already cast their votes,
which is a record.
Yeah.
I enjoy watching CNN in the morning for all of about 10 minutes, and then I ask myself, why did I turn this on?
Well,
it's a weird energy to leave the house with in the morning.
There's not a lot but bad news right now, so yeah, I've had to take little mental health vacations from the news and from every aggregate website that sends me just a email full of bad news several times a day. So
right.
Self-care is important in 2020, more so than it probably ever has been prior to this.
Absolutely. One of the things I was actually looking to talk to you about was that presidential debate that we can assume that Trump was coronavirus positive for. Who knows? The timeline doesn't make sense. But
the timeline makes sense if he was, yes.
And
we factor in the Rose Garden event and everything. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
An octogenarian went into a room with another octogenarian and just brought disease and pestilence with him. So
the greatest thing, well, there wasn't too many great points behind that debate, but one of the
no, there were not.
But one of the things that kind of stuck out in my head was that if this were a WWE promo cut, we have nonstop great footage. Like,
would it be any different if it were a WWE promo?
Not at all. Not at all.
I mean, he's kind of got a little Dusty Rhodes to him, so.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just as incomprehensible.
I was gonna go for Randy Savage, Macho Man Randy Savage, for a lot of the moments where he got super intense and he kept on trying to talk over everybody. I would have gone Randy Savage.
You mean the whole debate?
Yeah.
That was the whole debate. Just an old man yelling over soup at a diner. It was awful.
But it was the most, unorganized, and I credit Joe Biden for trying to stay on topic and trying to stay professional. I love the quote, "Oh, will you shut up, man?"
Yeah, I think there's a certain, even a kind and gentle man who is a consensus builder, who reaches across the aisles for his entire, 4 decades in Washington. Even for him, there is a bridge too far where you just have to call somebody a clown.
Oh, yeah. I can only imagine what further debates with Trump are going to look like, if there are even debates.
I don't think there's going to be one.
Is he allowed to be around people?
Well, they already canceled the second debate, and then Biden was like, okay, well, it's a town hall format. I'll hold a town hall.
Mm-hmm.
And great, because Trump was not going to participate in it, because in a virtual format, it's way too easy to turn off his mic when he starts yelling over soup. So he because he is jacked up on dexamethasone or whatever it is, the steroid they have him on.
Something you've never heard before. Right.
And he's already, that average Americans do not have access to, I assure you. So he's an already feeble-minded old man who is now amplified by steroids and has nuclear weapons. This is a problem for all of us.
Yeah. Or the beginning to a really great time. Like, take the presidency out of it, right? If he was just a regular guy and you said, hey, man, this is my friend Donnie. He just got out of the hospital. He's hopped up on steroids and he's down for whatever.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, we've seen what the whatever is in the history of Donald Trump.
You take the presidency out of that, right? That could be a really great time. You put the word
And the nuclear
president.
weapons. You also have to.
Oh
take
yeah, we
nuclear
have to
weapons out
take
of
the
equation.
nuclear weapons portion out of it, maybe. But yeah, it's not the sentence that you want to put together to refer to the president of the United States. Not at all.
I've known people like Steroid Donnie, and I can tell you, there's always the
This is a
the
new name.
ever-present. You've always got the ever-present fear that you're gonna have to bury a dead hooker in the desert. It's always simmering in the background with guys like that.
It's his new name, Steroid Donnie.
Yeah.
I
He
can only
is.
imagine. It's just him and a doctor. Doc, what do I got? Listen, Donnie, we're gonna give you a couple steroids. You're gonna go back out there. You're good. You're good. Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
I'm gonna be calling him Steroid Donnie for at least a week.
Yeah, well, I mean, we need to start tagging him with some nicknames because that's his whole forte.
Yeah.
Sleepy Joe, thankfully, really hasn't caught on outside of like neo-Nazi message boards. So has not been as effective as messaging as Crooked Hillary.
Right. The things that I've watched in the follow up to that presidential debate and some of the the interviews that he had, and now he's in a position where he's downplaying the coronavirus, and he's saying, well, they say I'm immune, and they say, if you had it, you're immune, which I'm pretty sure is not true, because I was watching, I was watching a soccer game. It was Switzerland versus Germany. And before the game, they were talking about how one of the Swiss players had tested positive for the coronavirus back in March. And then he tested positive for the virus again we are in October. September. Wow. But they were saying that he recovered quicker, and he didn't have as much of a impact on him the second time around, but he did get it again.
Well, I do know that there was one person that was verified to have caught two different strains, like the Asian and the European strain of COVID, which tracks epidemiologically. I hope I got that word right.
There's someone watching this right now that's like, no, you didn't, fucker.
But I had heard anecdotally. I mean, there were stories. I think it was like the WWE wrestlers and the AEW wrestlers that were some of the first people back to work in the world of sports entertainment. That they were like, yeah, man, I didn't think you'd get this thing twice, and then it just ran through the locker room again. So that's anecdotal, and the wrestler wasn't named, so I don't know. I don't know how much veracity that has.
I love
also
how
coming from the world of wrestling.
Yeah, it's like we're making reference to soccer players and WWE right now to talk about, this is where we are, because we don't know what to listen to. The science and the politics has really said a whole bunch of things that nobody really knows how to focus down on the facts.
Well, yeah, because you have a group of people who are determined to the eradication of facts because it doesn't suit their narrative. So we've seen this weaponized since around the time that Donald Trump first said fake news back in 2016. Right. It's been weaponized. It's all about, if I find a truth that is inconvenient to the story I want to tell, well, then that truth is a lie.
Yeah.
And that is a very dangerous way to govern. We've seen throughout history that a lot of those being an authoritarian populist who it is a pathway to accumulate and seize power. It doesn't have a long shelf life, however, when it runs up against a truth that's too big for the lie. When there's a societal meltdown, when there's a disease that's rampaging out of control. These leaders who operate in a fantasy world are not constructed to deal with real world problems. And what we've seen here is that this is the first crisis of Donald Trump's presidency that is not of his own making. of babies separated at the border, of assassinating an Iranian general. All of those things were things he created for the optics, for, to throw red meat to his base. This is the first one that's beyond his capacity to handle. And what happens is authoritarians in that circumstance, they get exposed. And I don't want to cast this probably has the ability to age very badly, but I'm going to say most of the people that govern that way don't leave office voluntarily. They leave at the end of a bayonet.
It's very true. It's very true. And we're looking at somebody who is doing so much to kind of set or cast doubt in people's mind. Someone was talking to me about how he's talking about the election being rigged and people need to sit back and watch and things like that. And they were asking me, why do you think he's saying that? I'm like, because he's trying to set doubt into your mind. He's trying to make you think, okay, if I lose, right, I can come out and say they messed up somewhere or something was wrong, because for the last 2 months or so, he's been talking about faulty election processes, and he's been talking about how something's not going to go right and how people need to watch. It's all by design. It's all by design, and knowing he might lose.
So let me undercut his argument first off. There is no history of widespread or even common mail voter fraud in this country. Mm-hmm. The one instance where it was done on a large scale was a Republican operative in North Carolina in a congressional race in 2018, and they had to actually throw out the results of the election and run the election again because of what was done. The Republican Party in California right now is putting out fake ballot drop boxes to harvest votes.
I've seen that.
Violation of election law. The fraud that you can point to, and there is very little, because our election systems are very secure and they are very hard to manipulate because of the amount of back checking that goes in to counting, one person, one vote. Those systems are very solid. The only contraventions that have been done to that in recent memory that have been caught have been on the Republican side. I'm not saying that Democrats don't do bad things. I'm on that side. I don't always like my allies, but I will say,
caught.
So this is why the Russians did what they did in 2016. They didn't try to hack things and change voter results. They used viral transmission of information to hack the voters. And they got 70,000 people total in the wrong 3 places to pull the lever for Trump. And that's why we are in this mess right now.
Yeah. Yeah, I think,
you can't hack election infrastructure successfully on a large scale to change a presidential result. What you can do is hack people's minds. And that's the biggest danger right now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And he's doing it because, I think I've heard a few people that have told me that they're edging towards voting for Trump. And I've asked them why, and kind of gone over that thought process with them and kind of asked them, okay, so what is it that you're looking for? What is it that you think that this man is going to give you? And I'll explain to you exactly why he won't. And a lot of the things is that he sounds like he is a person that is going to take care of the little guy. Mm-hmm. Right? He says, like, I'm not even going to lie to you. He says a lot of things that make it sound like he's going to help the little guy. No track record of coming through on his promises, but he keeps on saying it, right? It's the same thing as the whole stimulus thing that's going on right now, where he's saying, well, he has that. And I swear it's all by design. It's all by design, because what is he going to do? Push stimulus, push stimulus, push stimulus. No real plan for stimulus. Right? Nancy Pelosi says, we can't do this based on what you're trying to say. And then he says, well, it's up to you guys now. Figure it out. I've done my part. All of a sudden, I guess we'll just have to wait until after Election Day to get a stimulus package going. It's all by design.
Yeah, well, it's a bad design. A president who's flagging in the polls, who's down somewhere between 8 and 16 points nationally, depending on what poll you read, um, they should be trying to angle for money directly into Americans' pockets at
Mhm.
the 11th hour. They should be. He should want to do that. He's the one who put out the Twitter pronouncement of I'm walking away from the table from crazy Nancy and Shifty Chuck or whatever he calls it, whatever anti-Semitic slur he throws towards our Jewish politicians.
Steroid
It's
Donnie.
Yeah. Well, Steroid Donnie isn't thinking with a clear mind right now because he
No.
just got out of the hospital probably a couple of weeks too early. He's an old man with heart issues and he's clinically obese.
He's
And
six
he
foot
is,
three, like 280 pounds, and he's
yeah, they
not
say
in
he's
shape.
240. No way.
Yeah,
No way.
no way.
I'm 240. No
I'm
way.
210.
Yeah. No, he is not making sound decisions. And you could see how fast he backtracked from that because somebody around him went, hey, sir, I hate to object, but I don't think this is going to help you get reelected and avoid jail. And at the end of the day, he comes back to the table. Now he wants to push a stimulus package that's even bigger than what Nancy Pelosi had been bargained down to with the HEROES Act.
Mhm.
And and it's like that's not going to fly with Senate Republicans.
Mhm.
You're not going to get 60 votes to do that over there. Get bent. Like if you don't apply direct pressure to Mitch McConnell, you're not going to get anything done here. So right now you have all of our branches of government in every facet at war with one another. And if you're scoring at home, this is the exact opposite of the way our system was designed to function.
He's running rampant through politics and kind of just making everybody frustrated. He's making people like me frustrated because I look at the idea of a stimulus check, and I think that's something that every American would benefit from if you make under a certain amount of money. Because right now we need to encourage the Americans who don't make a lot of money to continue to spend. Right.
That, and we are on the cusp of a massive housing crunch
Oh
of
yeah.
epic proportions where when this eviction moratorium, which has already been weakened by the Trump administration with an FAQ they put out just the other day, when this eviction moratorium runs out, there's going to be just a massive problem with people with evictions stacked on evictions because people have not been able to work for 7 months now.
Right. Since
And
March, was it? Most restaurants got shut down March 18th.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
March 13th was my last day at work, so I think it was that Monday when everything went down. So yeah, that
Yeah.
tracks,
Because there
like
was a
15th.
yeah, because it was the 16th or 17th, because it was the weekend of St. Patty's Day, because I remember that being a whole big problem.
Yep.
And so people haven't been working since then. So especially those in that industry and other industries people who have been furloughed, people who have been laid off, and now we're trying to find a way for those individuals to contribute to an economy that's currently dying. We're watching establishments all over the world close permanently.
We've had like 3 in my neighborhood, 3 that I could throw a baseball to.
Really?
Like,
Yeah, there's
that's
some of the oldest
crazy.
restaurants. There's a restaurant in Toronto called Scallywags. It's located at Yonge and St. Clair, and it is known as the bar that you go watch the Canadian national team play. They always have the games on. And I've seen so many games there, and to know that I'm not going to be able to watch another game there is definitely sad, because it's part of the routines of watching Team Canada play when they're not at home. And they're just gone now. So what are we going to do to keep those businesses going? What are we going to do to make sure not just America, but the entire world keeps on going. They had a program in Canada called the CERB, but it did not go well, as far as I've heard. I don't know. I'm not there and I'm not following it too much, but the CERB did not go well. I heard it went.
Was that like a paycheck protection plan here?
No, it was kind of like unemployment, but
Oh, okay.
yeah, the Canadian government was giving you like $2,000 a month, and anybody could apply for it, even if you were already working. So some people
that seems like a blind spot.
Yeah, they took advantage. I don't think it just sounds like it wasn't well planned out. It really doesn't sound like it was well planned out. But moving on here, because I wanted to bring this up to you, was that how crazy does it sound that Donald Trump would not have clearance to work for any company in the United States, let alone any level of government in the United States, because he is millions of dollars in debt, probably around billions of dollars in debt.
I think it's either $500 million or multiple billions. Like the New York Times has verified like $500 million in debt. So there's more, because
right.
Literally a Robert Mueller investigation, a satellite investigation under his office, spent 3 years trying to trace down 10 million mysterious dollars that wound up in Trump's possession right before the election last year. And they weren't able to do it with all the powers of the federal government. His finances are a tangled web. Yeah. So if you know about $500 million that he owes foreign investors, there's probably a lot more.
Right. This is a man who has secrets of the United States in his head, and he's $500 million in debt to, we don't know who. We know it's someone or a few people, and he's the president. Like, that doesn't make any sense to me.
He's over leveraged internationally, and as a result, if he were to win 4 more years of election, a lot of those debts would come due, and then you would wind up in a position where the American president is making foreign policy decisions because of his own massive debt.
Yeah,
because he's a shitty businessman.
But what does he say? I never buy the building. I just put my name on the building and make people think that I own it.
Yeah, but then they did this whole thing for they switch, because they used to buy properties as you do in real estate. You know, you buy them, you accumulate the debt, you get tax breaks, whatever. And then there was this weird paradigm shift for them where all of a sudden they started buying properties with just straight cash. It was like, where did you get all this money? And yeah, it's looking more and more like there's at least money laundering of a massive degree in the equation. But there's probably foreign influence operations that have wormed their way into his finances, because they've wormed their way into every other aspect of his campaign. So why not his finances?
This is a weird time. You gotta be registered to vote at this time. If you're not registered to vote, you definitely have to go out there and do it. You have to find a way to go out there and do it. I mean, I remember a few years
too late ago, for some people.
Is it too late?
Well, I don't know about in Massachusetts. I know the deadline for Virginia was yesterday. The deadline for Florida, I think, was early this week. Yeah. I mean, there are some states that have same-day voter registration, which should be enshrined in law for everybody.
Absolutely.
As well, I would like to point out, as making Election Day a national fucking holiday. But one of the biggest impediments to voting rights is this sheer inability for people to take time off from work, childcare, all of their other responsibilities. Like, one of the biggest disenfranchisements to people in a low to moderate income brackets in terms of voting is that they don't often have room in their lives to take a day off from work or a morning off from work in order to go cast a vote. You know, it should be a national holiday. It's a really easy, that and Juneteenth. We can do a federal law right now. Boom, 60 votes. Let's go.
Right.
Like those should be fucking holidays.
The the crazy thing
Go.
is
Now I'm
that
fired up. I need a beer. Keep talking. I'm listening.
the, the thing that I found so interesting about the voter registration process in the United States is I don't even remember how I registered to vote in Canada. All I know is I'm registered to vote. So I either at some point, I think when I got my driver's license, and
Got
somebody,
two this time.
yeah, good, planning ahead. That's why you're the lead. That's why you're the lead political animal.
It's that kind of savvy acumen that has gotten me into this position.
that's
I'm a veteran.
this is how you get the lead position as the political analyst podcast. While most political analysts will just bring one beer, you bring two, knowing that
Oh.
a second may be necessary. Listen, I only poured so much vodka. I might need more. But yeah, I think at some point when I turned 18 and I either did a passport or a driver's license or something like that, or renewed my health card, there must have been a box that I think there's a box that you click off and it says, do you want to register to vote? And then do you want to be an organ donor? Those are the two things.
So when you click that box, you were a voter for the rest of your life? You were on voter rolls for the rest of your life?
Yeah, because I remember when I voted for mayor of Toronto, I didn't have to register. I just showed up. And then when I voted for premier, I think I voted for premier. Yeah, I just showed up. Yeah, I voted for premier and I just showed up. I didn't have to do anything else to prior to. And I'm pretty sure I had a ballot for the federal election, but I was in Boston at the time.
So that's the kind of thing that smart democracies do in order to encourage investment of their people. They make it super easy to vote. I think, you can fact check me on this. I'm probably wrong, but I think it's like 99% of people in Iceland vote.
Yeah,
Like
it's a super high number, and I think 98. Well, not. I think was it Australia automatically registers you to vote when you turn 18, and I think Argentina does the same thing. And most countries in Europe do something to make sure a large number of people are at least registered. I don't know about the whole voter turnout, but once again, I might be wrong because I don't. All I remember is voting for the mayor of Toronto and voting for the premier of Ontario, and literally just showing up to the polling station, and on both occasions showing up to the wrong polling station and being directed like a 10-minute walk somewhere else. Because in my neighborhood there are two polling stations, and they're literally right beside where I live. But yeah, I just showed up. And it was that easy. And then you hear about how difficult and how much work you have. Because do you have to register to vote every year?
No, but every time there's an opportunity, I double check it because one of the nefarious things that's allowed to go on over here, because we don't have a consistent body of laws or consistent enforcement of laws regarding voting rights, is that you can legislatively you can enact voter purges. Like if somebody hasn't, like let's say somebody hadn't voted in two elections, but
Mhm.
oh, this Trump guy, he's too much. You know what? I'm gonna go cast a vote for Joe Biden because this guy needs to get out of office. And they don't say they live in Ohio. I know Ohio for a fact has done a voter purge that's been tied up in the courts and a whole thing. But so somewhere along the line, enough legislators have gotten together to enact a piece of legislation. Like it's if they control enough branches of government where they do a voter purge, where somebody who's been inactive for X amount of cycles gets thrown off the voter rolls. So they might show up to the polling place thinking that, because they were registered to vote way back when, the last time they exercised their constitutional right, they show up at a polling place and it's like, no, you're not on the rolls, because I think the rationale is, if it'll cut down on voter fraud because you'll catch people that are, masquerading as others who are dead.
Yeah.
Something along those lines.
Yeah, I heard about that one. I heard about that one. Like somebody's cat voted. Like somehow someone registered their cat to vote. I don't know.
I think that was in Australia. I don't think that's
listen. I think that was here, man. I don't want to say it was in Australia, but I don't want to not say it was in Australia because
I don't want to smear Australia. I might be moving there if Trump wins this election. So
listen, I don't want to not say it was them, but I also don't want to say it was them. But I remember hearing a story about someone registered.
There have been dog mayors before, but that's a local election where a bunch of people voted for the dog. I do not believe the actual dog mayor had the constitutional right to vote.
Is it like a bark once if you want to approve it, bark twice if you disapprove of it?
That couldn't be any worse than our current government.
It seems as arbitrary as the way that things are going right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, and it's strange because what I've also learned, and I remember I learned this back when I was in school, that, and it blew my mind when I learned this about the United States, is that the place where you go to vote and the place where you register to vote is not always the same place. And I found that to be super strange. And I remember we were talking about a specific
well, I think in large part that's because of you might register at one central location and then there's polling places throughout the whole district.
Yeah.
Population density.
Yeah. Yeah. But here's what made it strange was that, and I think this is in, I want to say Jefferson County or Jefferson, Missouri, or Missouri in general, that the places that you register to vote are at least a 3-hour commute away from any minority-based population.
That's another very popular Republican tactic.
Yeah, and that's not the only state that does it. And what they try to do, especially as it comes close to voter registration time, is that they'll make up an excuse saying, oh, well, we had to close this station because, we just didn't have the budget to make sure that it was open, or something happened. We had to close this station down and couldn't register more people. But if they want to register, they have to travel 3 fucking hours, right? If you put a lot of people in that position, and as we said before, or as you said before, there's a specific group of people in the population, especially here in America, who, if you tell them, hey, do you want to register to vote? They'll say yes. But if you tell them that it's a 3-hour commute there and a 3-hour commute back, they're going to say no because they got to go to work, right? For them, going to work.
Exactly what I was talking about before.
Yeah, going to work every single day is part of their livelihood, right? They can't miss a day of work to go register to vote. That's not possible. It's not possible to them because every single penny to them counts. Every hour on the clock to them counts. So you're going to suppress a whole population of voters because why? And somehow strategically planned, all these voting station registration places are nowhere close to where the minorities are, where there's low income individuals. So
that's not an accident.
It's not. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, it's an accident if it happens once, right? But it's been happening consistently for years in multiple states, and nobody's doing anything about it. So it's definitely planned.
Well, I will say there are governmental bodies and organizations that are doing stuff about it. I mean, for example, Stacey Abrams' organization, Fair Fight, they're on the ground in all the battleground states, doing voter protection efforts, getting people signed up, helping people like resolve issues with their ballots. They're filing lawsuits against the millions of dollars of lawsuits that the Republican Party has brought to further restrict voting rights during a pandemic.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people, state attorneys generals bring suits all the time. There's a lot of people who are working towards it. The fundamental problem is that it's so ingrained now that it's
Yeah.
self-perpetuating.
There's,
You look at these places, when you look at a lot of like blue states that have red legislatures, because districts, they had enough power at one point to set things up so that they gerrymandered the districts to minimize the minority populations that wouldn't vote with them. So then they turned around and they made more restrictive voting laws, like voter ID laws.
oh yeah.
Low to moderate income people don't always have a driver's license that they can pull out to verify their identity. There's a lot of very racially restrictive laws that have been put into place in states that trend democratic, but because the bad guys have been so smart about the way they've built from the ground up, like they've managed to completely disenfranchise the population and then make it harder for them to subsequently vote and override the people who have overrode the will of the people.
It's interesting that you said that, because that's exactly what I was thinking about as soon as you said it. And I remember watching a video and they were going up, and it may have been The Daily Show, or I don't know who it was, but they were
John Oliver did a big piece on it a while back. So that's
and they were talking to people and talking to them about registering to vote, understanding if they knew how to, and understanding what they needed, and if they had an ID, the proper ID, because that's the thing. You can't just show up to a station to register with the wrong ID, or if your ID's expired or whatever it was. And he found out that a lot of people were not even educated on the proper ways to vote, or the proper ways to register to vote. And like I said, I am registered to vote in Canada. I have no clue how I did it. I just know I'm registered. That should be the situation here.
In your system, I would guess that nobody's going to be trying to write you out of those voter rolls and disenfranchise you of your vote. Like in a normal, healthy, functioning democracy, the will of the people dominates. Because you get enough people together, generally, whatever things we disagree on ideologically, we can kind of come to a consensus of what's not the wrong thing to do.
Yeah. Well, in Canada, our political parties are very centrist. Like the conservative.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Like the conservative party in Canada they're conservative in their ideologies, but they still are more centered. And the same thing with the Liberal Party. Everything's just kind of over here. Some want to do a little bit more domestic based planning. Some want more private sector. The only people who are straight out of, left field are the NDP. And, I love the NDP. All right. To my Canadians, I love the NDP, the New Democratic Party. I think they say a lot of great things. They just have no plan. they just
That sounds like a problem.
No, listen, the NDP, they're dreamers. They're like, if it's like that friend that's always saying, yeah, man, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. Like, yeah, man, that sounds amazing. How are you going to do it? I don't know. It's just going to happen. That's the NDP for you. They're always like, I remember one time the NDP were talking about like, we're going to make school free for everybody. And I looked at them and I said, how? No answer. But I love what they say. And then you have the Green Party.
At least our progressives over here have plans. Dubs.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, so the NDP would not be the Democratic Party. I think the Democratic Party more equates to the Liberal Party and what their ideologies are. The NDP would be more of if Bernie Sanders has his own party in America, he would be the NDP.
Which he basically does. They're called Democratic Socialists.
Which is what the NDP is. It's a Democratic Socialist Party. They have a lot of great ideas and they want to do a lot of great things for the country. but it just doesn't always make sense in the context of Canada as a whole. But it definitely would make sense on a region to region basis. But yeah, we're so central because I've never, like, people who don't like Justin Trudeau right now can't necessarily
Say
hate.
their names, I will go to their house. He's like the leader of the free world. Get the fuck on.
Yeah,
Go
no,
ahead.
yeah, no. Listen. You know, not too many times could you say you're the leader of your country is probably one of the most handsome leaders of a country in the world. Top 10, easily top 10.
Well, handsome, yes, and also seems to actually have a brain in there. Like
He's all right.
seems to comport himself pretty well.
He's got some
So he's a
shortcomings.
full package.
He's got some shortcomings. I definitely will say that. I'm not going to say he's perfect. He's got some shortcomings, but for the most part, I like him for the country right now, because I also think that Canada right now is in a position where they need to kind of redefine themselves in the world and kind of become a presence, because everybody just knows us as the nicest people on the planet, which I'm very happy about. But I think that, you know, we need to start redefining ourselves. And he is like that happy medium where he's not going to do too much, but he's not going to do too little. And we could just kind of ride the wave until we figure out,
Well,
okay, now it's time to make a change.
he did have a little dust up with Saudi Arabia. He was out there. Like he's going after the bad people.
Yeah. And listen, to the people who think, listen, I am not mad about Justin Trudeau's blackface costume when he was in university, right? He dressed up in like a Aladdin type costume, and he put some like makeup on to darken his skin during Halloween, right? It was Halloween, all right? If you as a person can say that you didn't do some sort of questionable shit on Halloween, you are a better man than I, and please feel free to cast the first stone. But I've done some questionable shit on a Halloween. So, with that being said, I'm not mad at Justin Trudeau because, like, wait, think about when you were 20, right? Like, how quickly would you go up to 20-year-old you and punch that dude in the fucking gut and be like, fix yourself, man. What the fuck? Fix yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I'd probably avoid the face, but yeah.
Yeah, avoid the face. You need that. You need that. But
there would be some harsh lessons dispensed. Yes.
Yeah, like if I were to go up to 20-year-old me right now, I'd pull him aside and be like, hey man, you need to fix yourself, man. What are you doing? What are you doing? You're out here doing this shit, right? No plans, no goals, just living life, right?
You're gonna look back on this and not be happy about it. So
right?
Smarten up.
We could have invested. We could have bought Bitcoin.
That is the thing you want to do. Is if you got a time machine, go back. That could be like $60,000 of Bitcoin like in 2 years. Like, go back in time and have your prior self buy Bitcoin and kill Hitler. But
but that's the thing. It's, you know, I'm not mad at Justin for that, and that's the thing. It's Canadians. You don't realize how good you have it because you could be here. I'm not saying that America is a bad country. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying that, you know, even Americans would rather they were Canada right now. Like,
yeah, I've thought about going there.
Right? I'm pretty sure Buffalo is kind of like, so how do we become part of you guys? Like Buffalo, Vermont, Maine. how do we join you guys? Talking about the Oscars. Yeah, that's what we were doing. And we got sidetracked. But yeah, Canadians, be happy about, I know a lot of people realize it, and I know a lot of people that still think America is the place to be. And like I said, America is not a bad country at all. It's not. It's definitely and excuse me for saying this, I still think America is a work in progress.
Oh yes, it is. We thought we had this shit licked in about 2012, and took a big step back.
Right? Obama came in. We were feeling nice. We're really feeling
Yeah.
nice. This guy right here, Obama, first black president. Everything's gonna be good. And then it took a hard left.
The backlash, or as Van Jones would say, the white lash to that was clearly we're dealing with it right now. It was significant. So,
but it's a tough
apparently
thing to
we
think
have
about.
not completely divested ourselves of the white supremacist influences in our culture in 2020. Who knew?
Right? Well,
Yeah.
I mean, we knew they were there, but it's like the fact that white supremacist groups still exist, and the fact that they currently feel that they have a presence in the political realm is disturbing.
Well, they do.
Right.
You have the president of the United States shouting marching orders to the Proud Boys.
Exactly.
During a debate televised to 75 million people. Yeah,
right?
Yeah. They know that.
Was it stand by and watch? Stand by and watch is what
stand back and stand by.
Stand back and stand by. There you go. I feel dirty just saying it.
Easiest thing in the world to condemn white supremacy, even if you don't mean it. You just say it, blow right by it. Say, I condemn that.
Well, that's
the white supremacists aren't going to believe you when you say it. You're not losing your voter base. Like,
right.
Yeah, it's just such a low bar for him, and he still trips over it consistently.
Man is tripping over a stack of phone books at this point.
Just steps on rakes like it's his job.
I like what Germany does in that especially dealing with Nazis as Germany has made it illegal to form any group relating to the Nazis or neo-Nazis, so they're actually considered terrorist groups, and I think that's the right approach.
They have done a very poor job of rooting it out in their own midst, based on what's gone down with like their elite military commando units
in Germany.
I mean, there's been like hundreds of people who are part of a neo-Nazi group. Like
they still have them. They still have the groups, but they make it illegal to actively gather in public.
It's more ever present in Germany now than it's been since 1946. It's scary. It's scary how much of this has been allowed to come into the mainstream. Like the guys at Charlottesville chanting "Jews will not replace us" while carrying tiki torches. My grandfather fought a whole war against exactly those people. Like, what do you? Oh, now I'm fired up. Okay.
My question to you is that, like, it's like you said, like Americans fought wars for the idea of freedom and liberty, just to in 2020 feel as though we should limit the freedom and liberty for some people, and then other people over here should be free. Because the way that, even when you listen to a lot of these, Republicans or Trump supporters talk about freedom, they're not talking about freedom for everyone. They're talking about freedom for them and people who look like them. Right.
Well, that's the essence. Okay, go on. Sorry.
I was going to say, and then they look at, for example, people like me, and they say, well, why can't you be more like me? So you can experience the freedom that I can experience. And I look and I think to myself, well, I know you're saying that, but you don't really mean it. Like I see the words and I hear the words, but there's an ulterior meaning behind those words, because you don't want me to be the same way that you are. And then the things that I want, you don't want to have. Like when I hear people talk about, well, why should I pay all these taxes so that your kid can go to school? So that all of our kids can go to school and they can all be educated. You know what makes this country a better country? A lot more educated people, right?
And there is a societal value to be gained by dealing with problems on the front end.
Yeah.
If you spend $1,000 here, for example, to keep someone stably housed, then you don't spend $80,000 in tax money to put them in a shelter
Oh
for
my
two
God.
years.
Absolutely. That is the truest thing
You
ever.
know,
People don't realize
yes.
it. People don't realize that if you can, like,
If you make investments into Black and brown communities
or
to
just,
bring them out of poverty, those communities that are that are afflicted with poverty, if you make those investments and bring them out of poverty, well, a rising tide lifts all boats. It's not a threat to you for everybody to engage in prosperity.
yeah, but to them it is. You got to remember that. To them,
Well,
to a lot of people, and I understand that. I understand what that means because in you think for example, if you think in like hood terms, right? I can't be rich and you rich at the same time because you're doing something that's going to take away from my money. But and I love to, quote Jay-Z on this one. There's a true Jay-Z line is, if everybody in your clique is rich, your clique is rugged, and nobody will ever fall because you will each be each other's crutches. Right? Jay-Z said that in 1994. What's up? Right?
from a purely moral standpoint, moral and ethical standpoint, it makes a lot of sense to try to level the playing field and bring everyone up.
Yeah.
But from a purely practical standpoint, and Republicans and libertarians fashion themselves as, practical people who are bottom line individuals. Well, you spend a lot less money fixing a problem than making sure the problem didn't happen in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the fundamental thing. We make upfront investments in our society, whether it's to increase education for disadvantaged populations, whether it's to address social determinants of health and make sure that everybody has a home to go home to, especially at a time when you should be out of
Right.
the public and not contributing to a fucking global pandemic.
Dude,
Like, these investments that you make up front save you money from a fiscal conservative standpoint. Like,
mm-hmm.
I'm gonna spend this money anyway. I might as well spend it up front and spend less of it to not have to deal with the problem later. It doesn't make any sense to me at all to go in the other direction.
It doesn't. And what people don't realize is that this is the moment is now to make these changes. The moment is now to make sure that we're doing the right things. Because, and to give you
The moment may start on January 22nd.
Okay.
The moment is not right now.
But the decisions that we make today, one of the things that I think about, I don't know if it's related or not, but listening to us talk, like while listening to you talk, I was thinking about it. Brampton, Ontario is a city that was an up and coming development. It was designed around the idea that Toronto was becoming way too expensive and that people needed to move outside of the Toronto to, afford living. And recently, there have been a lot of situations in Brampton surrounding violence, like gang violence in Brampton. It's like, if I'm, and hold on, I'm going to text you an image of like homes in Brampton, and you're going to look at it and think to yourself, this is where violence is happening. This makes no sense. Sorry for the pause, people watching, but some of the people watching this who are from Toronto who know what I'm trying to prove right now are happy that I'm for the wait. All right, I just sent you a link. You'd think that by now internet would get it there faster. I got 5G.
Oh, there it is.
Neighbor, so
It looks pastoral.
right? But like neighborhoods like that are where, yeah, Brampton, Ontario. Neighborhoods that look like this are now the new ghettos. Well, ghettos is a bad word, but the new places where violence is happening. In
Well, I'll tell you, our president said Antifa is coming to the suburbs, so like, just nowhere safe anymore.
nowhere. But it's like you have you live in Canada, right? You have access to heavily subsidized education, free healthcare. There really is no reason to have street related beef. Like there's
Right.
no reason. Like there's no reason, because I can personally, I can get it. I can get it. When you come down here and you see the way that people live down here, and you see that, wow, street life is really what they need to survive, because they are a listen, minorities in this country are a seriously disenfranchised group of people who do not get equal opportunity and access to gainful employment and feeling like they've accomplished anything in their lives. And a lot of that is based on government officials not doing the right thing to make education and healthcare and affordable housing priority. And you look at a place like Canada that has a lot of these systems in place, and people are just squandering it. Because what? You want to look hard for the internet? Are you kidding? For the internet?
Well,
Of
I don't
people
know.
who don't know you and don't give a shit about you, other than you are entertaining to them, and they follow you for the entertainment. And you're good. Like, how are you going to sit in front of a 4 or 5 bedroom, 2-story home, recent build house, and talk about you have to go get the ops? Dude, just go to school. Your parents are coming home. Right? You live with your parents. You're not a gangster. You don't live in Chicago, New York, Dorchester, which is actually a really good neighborhood now. Atlanta, like Houston, Compton, these Miami, these neighborhoods that are known to be some of the more dangerous neighborhoods historically in the United States. You're not from there, and you don't have to go through the same problems that these people went through. Right? You live in Canada. Healthcare is free. A BA is only going to cost you about 12 grand. There's no need. Go to school. It's so simple. It's so simple.
Sounds like heaven compared to here.
It's so simple. Healthcare is free.
But
Well, I know that Doug Ford, who is we've really gone off the rails here.
we went way into Canada.
Listen,
Big time.
Doug Ford is evil, right? Doug Ford.
You liked his brother, though.
I do like his brother. I do. I don't care who knows either. I do like his brother, because so I am by definition a very liberal-minded individual when it comes to politics, but when it comes to municipal politics, I lean more conservative, because I think that you really need.
It's not uncommon.
Yeah. You really need to start thinking about the people who live in the city and what's going to be best for the people who live in the city. And liberal politics don't necessarily work well within a municipality. That's where it doesn't work, in my opinion. But Rob Ford, who really...
We disagree, but
yeah. Rob Ford, his main focus as a more conservative mayor for Toronto, his focuses were making sure that any transit expansion that happened in the city of Toronto was done through the Toronto Transit Commission, that it would never be done by a private company, that unfortunately the taxpayers would have to pay for it, and it would definitely hurt the budget. But at the end of the day, it would still be a city of Toronto function. They can control it, they can manage it, and that way they can moderate it, or make sure it runs as smooth as they possibly could. He was all about...
that should be a municipal function.
Yeah,
I would think, like, you don't want to outsource that.
Well, the new mayor that came in afterwards, and this is a really interesting thing, was Rob Ford is the only mayor in Canadian history to get federal funding for a municipal transit project. He's the only mayor in Canadian history to do it. And
That is incredibly a foreign concept to America. Okay, go on. Okay, all right.
And the moment that John
Wow.
Tory came in, and I'm not saying John Tory is a bad guy, but John Tory was like, well, if we continue on Rob Ford's plan, it's going to cost the taxpayers a lot of money. And therefore, we're going to outsource it to a private company and they're going to build the subway for us. Now, to get from one side of Eglinton to the other side of Eglinton, streets that you have no clue what the fuck I'm talking about. But
Nope.
one side of Eglinton to the other side would normally cost you, I think, like $3.25 Canadian if it was TTC. But now it's costing people like $15 each way because it was done by a private company. Right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
Rob
that's
Ford was
why
all about making sure that these expansions that are done to Toronto, these subway and train expansions, need to be done under the city of Toronto to make sure that we can control the prices. It's going to suck because of the fact that it's going to be super expensive to do. We don't necessarily have the money for it, and it's going to be a capped price as far as transit goes. But it'll make sure that it's still accessible to the people and that they can actually fucking use it. Because now we have a multi-million-dollar project for transit to get you from the fucking zoo, I think it is, all the way out to the airport, and nobody wants to use it because it's super expensive, right? How does that help? Right? I'm not saying that Rob Ford is the greatest guy ever. No, because he likes to drink and drive, right? And I'm not saying
there was
that,
the cocaine and hookers thing too, but
right?
the
I'm
drinking
not
and driving
saying John
is
Tory is
significant.
the devil, right? Because, he likes the Raptors and I like the Raptors. But there are differences, right? Rob Ford was all about making sure that every penny in Toronto municipal politics was accounted for, right? There was a story about how I think it was like 10.
Which doesn't seem on brand for his persona. He
Yeah,
seems like somebody who would be using the expense accounts to finance
he
like
never took a
jaunts to
salary.
Vegas.
He never took
Like,
a salary.
wow,
Yeah,
that's
he was
crazy.
mayor of Toronto for about 4 years. He never once took one paycheck from the city of Toronto.
Don't judge a book by its cover, kids.
Right? He never once. Don Bosco, which is the school in his neighborhood, was about to.
We're gonna go for a walk.
Absolutely. Don Bosco was about to axe their football team. He individually funded their football team.
Oh yeah, you told me about that. Yep.
Yeah. It was, and football programs in Canada are dying. And he made sure that one stayed alive. So, you just have a guy who really cares about, like, he may not be the best person, right? And I will be the first person to admit that Rob Ford was not the best person, but his politics was all about Toronto. And Toronto is the city that I love. So if you're going
You
to
can
do.
be a shitty person and be a good civil servant.
Exactly.
That's entirely possible.
That is,
It just so happens that the president of the United States of America is a shitty person and a shitty civil servant.
yeah.
That's a bad combination.
Yeah. You shouldn't be both. It's Rob Ford was a good man. Rest in peace. Right. I
If
know a
anybody
lot of.
made it through the Canadian part of this podcast, now they get to watch me smoke a cigarette in my kitchen. So
Rob Ford
it's
was
kind of an Easter egg for everybody, for the real heads.
The people who know Rob Ford in America, they only know him because a lot of people. I think Kimmel's mentioned him a couple of times. I think Conan's mentioned him. Tom Segura has mentioned him, but a lot of people have mentioned him very negatively, and nobody's.
He went whatever the precursor to going viral was.
Yeah.
Like
But nobody, when he went viral as the crack smoking mayor of Toronto, which
that'll do it.
Right, which 100% was true. Nobody really talked about his policies. Nobody really talked about the fact that I believe it was 5 to 10 city councilors in Toronto tried to use $200,000 of taxpayer money to take a trip to Milan so they could do some consulting for a fashion week in Toronto. Right? Nobody talked about that. Nobody talked about the fact that city councilors in Toronto were on average expensing about $20,000 a year of things that they could have 100% paid for themselves because they were not necessary expenses, right? City councilors in Toronto were not paying for parking, not paying for transit, not paying for anything, using their city council rule to get out of a lot of things. And he was like, no, that's not necessary. You guys make so much money. You telling me you can't buy a bus pass?
If only we could put Mitch McConnell on the MBTA for one day just to see how the other side lives. Please take the orange line, Mitch. He'll have a Damascus moment right there and be like, oh, geez, I need to refine my whole approach.
Right. Well, now I mean, listen, Americans who are watching this, Canadians who are watching this, we are neighbors and we need to start learning from each other. One side more than the other. But
yeah, I'm not going to disagree with you there. I know which side you mean. We've not given a good accounting of ourselves for the last 4 years.
But there's so much opportunity as far as, there's no need to suppress voters. Allow people to vote. Just because you think you're going to lose shouldn't be
give
a
him some camera time.
Oh, we have a visitor.
Hi. Monty says hi. Monty also says, put me the fuck down. Ooh, that was not a good dismount. I'll be paying for that later.
Not stick the landing.
That was my fault. Sorry.
There's so many things that are going on where you just think to yourself, it's 2020. Why are we still having this conversation about voter suppression? Why are we still having the conversation about white supremacist groups? Well,
because both of those are viable aspects of Republican Party politics right now.
Yeah.
Like, as a former Republican, I can say the thing that really broke me, that caused me to become a never Trumper and then to switch my affiliation altogether to the Democratic Party, was the fact that so much of Republican politics strategically is based around getting people to not vote, whether it's through active measures like disenfranchisement, like the Florida thing with the felons, like whether it's those active measures or whether it's the more, I guess, passive measures, for lack of a better term, of just negative campaigning to the point that it poisons the electorate and lowers voter
far away
turnout.
from your router.
Oh, what was the last thing you heard? Because that was really good.
I just heard
You not hear me?
I can hear you, but for a while you kind of zoned out because I think you're a little bit too far away from your router.
What was the last thing you heard? Because that was my best bit thus far. Damn.
I don't remember. That's the worst part.
I was saying whether it's active measures.
I remember passive. Passive was the last word I heard.
Oh, okay. So whether it's active measures or whether it's passive measures like poisoning the electorate through negative campaigning, I mean, that's a major Republican Party tactic. Is if you can campaign negatively, that turns off enough independents and undecideds who just get discouraged with the entire political process. So they're just like, all these guys are the same. It's negative. It sucks. I'm not even going to vote. My vote doesn't matter.
Yeah.
That plays in the hand of Republican electoral strategy.
Well, they have the greatest voter turnout in the United States. I remember when once again, that was the thing that I remember reading, was that Republicans do not, like, registered Republicans turn out in a larger percentage than registered Democrats. And registered Democrats are more likely to vote Republican than registered Republicans are to, I think registered Republicans only vote Democrat 10% of the time, whereas registered Democrats will vote Republican 30%, sometimes 40% of the time.
So in this country, there is a large consensus from the left to the center right on democratic policies that make sense, whether it's, common sense gun control, expansion of healthcare, things like that. All these things pull with a popularity that is outside of the partisan splits in this country. So the only way to make sure that you don't wind up on the receiving end of an electoral beatdown because your policies are universally unpopular is to limit the electorate. And Republicans, since they've coddled up to gun rights activists and the evangelical community, they know they have a solid base. Those people are going to come, like you were saying, those people are going to come out and they are going to vote no matter what. Hell, high water, pandemic, whatever, they're going to be.
For God, they're going to do it in the name of Jesus. What's that dude's name with the Superdome?
Joel
Osteen.
Yeah.
Guys like him. It's guys like him.
Yeah, he's not super Trumpy, but he's medium Trumpy. But at any rate, so Republicans know if they can shrink the electorate by poisoning the well, by making the discourse toxic to the casual voter, they will turn people off from even pulling a lever. That's another big part of their strategy. Like, they've much more transitioned to active measures in this election cycle like nothing we've ever seen before. Lawsuits and legislation that has been done to try to keep people from voting. But it's the passive measures that are, I think, even more persistently toxic to our society, because that makes people not want to participate, not keeping people who want to, not imposing barriers between people who want to participate and participation, but making people actively less engaged. That's a bigger problem even than the active voter suppression methods.
Dude, and the craziest part of it is and as we've talked and as I've learned more about the Republican Party here, and I just want to start by saying there's nothing wrong with being a Republican per se, right? If you're this kind of Trump Republican, definitely something wrong there. But being a Republican is not necessarily wrong because it's a political ideology. You're entitled to whatever whatever aligns with your personal ideologies. You should go do that. But I would also like to say that if you literally just Google Republicanism and read what Wikipedia has to tell you, and you don't even have to go to I'm not even going to tell you to go to a great source. Just read Wikipedia. Just whatever Wikipedia tells you about Republicanism. You will learn that what is going on right now in this country is not what Republicanism is defined by.
It's not what I grew up with.
Right.
We grew up in a Reagan Bush house.
Right.
Like that meant something. That meant that we were standing against the enemies of this country, particularly Russia.
Right.
There's a reason that Ronald Reagan won, like pretty much a clean slate. I think it was in his reelection. I think he won like a clean slate, like won everything.
Yeah.
There's because Republicans used to be the people that you would entrust with executive leadership, and you would entrust Democrats with legislation and with the legislative bodies, and the two of them would suss it out in the middle, and they'd get to a compromise that wasn't ideal for either side, but it generally worked for the American people.
Yeah, because Republicanism as of today it's really not. It's like we're voting for the
cult.
Yeah, like
it's
voting
a fucking cult.
Oh shit. Oh no. Okay, whatever. I would say that voting for the Republican Party right now is not necessarily voting for Republicanism. It's voting for the ideologies of Trump, which is completely different.
Yeah, they 100% said that in the party platform at the RNC, which was, we don't have a platform. We just support the agenda of Donald Trump.
Right.
And I was like, you guys aren't even going to say anything? Is you going to do anything? You're just going to be like, yeah, that guy, that's the one. We're going to hitch our wagon to him. He knows everything.
Like even for me, and I will say this, that I don't personally, I identify with republicanism because I think there's a few things that are missing. Because one of the like one of the traditional aspects of republicanism is that people have the ability to own and monopolize the labor of an individual and then could treat that individual as a commodity. And that's where I really can't stand with republicanism.
It sounds a lot like slavery, but no, go on.
I just can't. I can't sit with that. And for me personally, I am a little bit of a centrist. I do believe that there's conservatism that needs to be done. There's liberalism that needs to be done, and
I agree.
Certain social, like we do need. At this point in time, political parties should not be extremists. It shouldn't be extremist because we need to learn from various aspects in order to create the ideal society, right? Yes, we need to have strong social programs because why? Strong social programs, if they existed in a time like now, would be strong enough to support the people to allow them to stay on their feet and for the economy to stay afloat while we figure ourselves out through this time, right? Yep. We need to have strong social, but we also need to have strong conservative programs to make sure that the ideologies of the people who live in the country are, met before we start thinking about the ideologies of people outside the country, right? Americans need to be taken care of before we take care of the rest of the world.
But we can walk and chew gum at the same time. Exactly. So one of the things in the America First philosophy that misses the point, and it's exactly like the situation that we're in right now with COVID is very endemic. It is very emblematic of that. Is that if you take care of a problem before it gets to your shores, like Obama sending a bunch of military personnel and doctors and everything to Africa to confront, I believe it was Ebola. Mm-hmm. If you stop that by investing in other countries and by helping them to solve their problems, like the immigration thing. Mm-hmm. The Trump administration has ceased a lot of the USAID aid to, South and Central American nations. Okay, well, when you cease that aid, what happens? You have a population that's more desperate, less enfranchised, and they're like, where's opportunity? Okay, I will risk everything to go in a caravan up and risk death in order to get into this, risk death or incarceration at the very minimum, in order to get into another country to not die here. If you solve that on the front end, much like I was saying earlier with, things like housing, social determinants of health, if you solve that stuff on the front end, then the problem never manifests itself. If you invest in other countries, the problems don't come here.
Right. And I think to myself that there's a whole piece of this country that's underdeveloped and nobody wants to live there, right? I'm not going to name names for states because I'm not trying to get canceled before I even become popular. But there's
North Dakota.
But there are a whole bunch of states that I wouldn't move to, but I can guarantee you there's a lot of people in developing nations right now that would definitely love the opportunity to move to those countries or those states and help develop the economy of those states and give those states a lot more opportunity to grow, because why? Those people are going to come with skills and trades that didn't exist in that environment before. People with, engineering degrees in other countries that we forced to become, workers at a fast food. Like, this dude is a fucking engineer in his country and you're making him flip burgers in this country? That makes no fucking sense. Why don't you go put that dude in and help
him? But by the same token, culturally speaking, in terms of cultural adjustment, you do need to have soft landing spots for these people.
Yeah.
Like, you can't just throw them in the middle of North Dakota because it's not going to be the most user-friendly environment to people that
No.
are adjusting to a new nation and a new language and a new set of rules.
Oh my
Like,
God, no.
you do need to have structures in place in order to support these communities, like Syrian refugees when they come over. And people don't understand that doing the right thing is hard. It takes work. It takes sacrifice.
Yeah.
And it means that we're not going to have an ideal situation, but it does make us look a lot better on the world stage if we are not the people who are closing our borders and going America first and
Yeah.
whatnot. It makes a lot fewer people want to kill us.
Yeah.
And that's
you can't be America's number one in
fundamental
2020.
Yeah.
America's
One of
number
the
one. Top 50.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, it's problematic to not deal with these things proactively.
Yeah.
Like, we deal with them proactively, we can prevent them from ever becoming problems here. And if they become problems here, then we can deal with them.
Yeah.
But like, if you don't approach things with the mindset of how are we going to cut this stuff off at the pass in the way that is sustainable, in the way that will solve this problem in perpetuity. If we don't address things like that, we're just putting band-aids on the problem, on a chest wound.
I've said this to many people a lot of times, is that as far as the global success of the world, America plays a very important role. Very important role. And the president of the United States is a very important job that can't just be given to anybody. It needs to be given to the right person who's going to do the right things. If America succeeds, we can all succeed because of how important America is to the global economy. But if America's not doing the right things on a global stage, then the world is not going to become a better place. And I think about how we look at a lot of situations where people don't have access to the proper medical care and people don't have access to proper education, and America has the resources, is that we should, at this point in our society, just be focusing on ways to make the globe better, right? Not just our own countries, but the entire world. How are we going to make the entire world better? What resources do I have in my country that I can share with the rest of the world to help them? Right, because there's a finite amount of resources in this world. There's a finite amount of resources. Take that in, right? And if we squander it, we're not doing it right. Like, there's no reason that America can't look at developing nations and say, okay, we have this, this, and this. You have this, this, and this. Let's start moving our resources around to make sure that we're all okay, right? Can we all do that? Can we all agree on that? Okay, great. Without us actually, crippling your nation and then you becoming extremely in debt to us that we can't pay. So we're going to send your debt to other countries that we can't pay. And
well, do you know what happens when you make those investments in those countries, which is what China is doing right now with the Belt Road Initiative in Africa, is when they become economically dependent on you to a certain extent, then you can put your mode of civil existence upon them and make them conform to your democratic ideals versus authoritarian communist ideals from China. Like, you can foster democracy and healthy government around the world if you do it right. If you make the investment, and the investment requires giving money to these quote unquote shithole countries, as Donald Trump says. Why are we giving money to these shithole countries? Well, so that we can make sure that that's a problem that doesn't come to our doorstep.
Yeah.
The more places we make like America in the world,
we're not necessarily like America. Parts. Yeah, we're not saying America. Okay. Yeah, listen, I heard you say that, and I was just like, oh no.
To emulate the best parts of what the American dream is in American society. Shut up.
We need to clarify.
The more times we can do that, the
Yeah.
more it helps us secure our own borders, the more it makes people who believe in America around this world, rather than ones who are easily radicalized
Mhm.
into movements that want to kill us. Like,
Yeah.
it just makes an incredible amount of sense to go around the world being a good guy and only killing people when you absolutely have to.
And not only that, but being open to taking in the best of the rest of the world. Like, if I think one thing that Canada does really well is people see Canada as a place that takes in some of the best information from the rest of the world and tries to apply it within their society. And I think that's another thing that, like, so you can give, so America can essentially give to the world, but also you can take from the world as well, and show that it's a reciprocal relationship. It's not just us imposing our ideologies on you, but we want to hear what you have to say as well, so that we can also create a better society within our own country.
Africa right now is a hotbed of technological innovation
Mm-hmm.
at the high end. We are not getting a piece of that because China has gone into Africa and they've established themselves as the people who are investing in these countries, investing in these young entrepreneurs that are bringing things to the tech field that
Yeah.
are innovative and are game changing on a global level.
The problem is
China,
people look at Africa and they just think bare land, kids running around with no shoes on, and no,
shithole countries.
yeah, like as the president says, shithole countries. But what they don't realize is that, yes, Africa does have its issues with poverty, but
We do here, by
yeah,
the way. Like, we're not ones to cast stones.
right. But Africa also has these amazing schools with technological, and like, we got people in Boston fucking creating robot dogs that are going to take over the fucking planet. Have you seen that shit? The robot
No, but
human,
doesn't shock me.
right? People out here are out here trying to create artificial intelligence robots that could disarm a gunman, and dogs that can walk themselves. And it's like, is this what have you not seen a sci-fi movie? Have you not seen a sci-fi?
Yeah, I was about to say, this sounds very Westworld.
Skynet.
Yeah. And then the robot dogs came and society ended.
Yeah. I really hope it didn't have to come to the robot dogs. I was hoping it would be something else. But there's definitely an opportunity for us to learn, and you know, and that, it's not just America, it's not just Canada, it's every country. It's no longer about what you can do for yourself. It's no longer about what you can do for your country, but what are you doing for the world?
Because
we're all
it's all
connected
interconnected.
now. Yeah,
Yeah.
we're all more connected today than we were 20 years ago. And we also need to figure out how, in this world of connection, that we can find a way to work together. Right?
Well, yeah.
All people.
I mean, and again, I just keep coming back to the fact that if you invest outwardly in a smart, disciplined fashion, you are able to control the narrative as it progresses. You are able to build the kind of world that you want to build, and you are able to keep problems from cropping up at your own front door. Like, that's the smart, pragmatic thing to do. It is, in a roundabout way, it is the fiscally conservative thing to do, to make upfront investments that stop you from having to make big payouts down the road.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't understand why more people don't get that in government.
Yeah, it's true. It's so true. But listen, we've gone for about an hour and a half.
Yeah, we went long again. You're gonna have to edit out one part, so that'll kill some time.
It won't kill that much time. Anyway, it was only like 5 seconds. But
it was a pleasure as always.
Always, once again, lead political analyst. It's a made-up title. It literally means nothing. It's got zero pay. But thank you for coming through. If you know, if you're listening to this and you are not going to vote, please do vote. Doesn't matter. I mean, it does matter who you vote for. Don't vote for steroid Donnie. All right, don't vote for.
Get active, get engaged, learn things, learn about your country,
so much
make informed
information.
decisions.
So much information out there. So much information out there. Use it. Please
Just need the right
please.
sources.
Yeah. If it came from a place called News Corp, that's still Fox.
CSNN News. Yeah.
Right. If it's called News Corp, it's still Fox. Don't listen to it.
And we should tell them to smash that subscribe button, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I always forget. Hit the like, hit the subscribe, so that I can start making money from this podcast. So I can.
You're very transparent.
I'm very transparent on what I'm trying to do here. I don't want to lie to the people.
Just trying to get paid.
I'm not even trying to particularly get paid. I'm just trying to buy better podcasting equipment at the end of the day. That's
Fair
what
enough.
I'm trying to do. Need better lighting because my lighting is just always not on point.
It was way better today. Way better than mine.
Yeah, my lighting's always all over the place, right? I just want one sponsorship. I want to do an advertisement read for the people, and nobody asks questions. I love the last episode. Right. Did you watch the last episode?
I watched half of it. I'm not quite through it yet, but I gotta in the ramen discussion.
Yeah. I got a really cool comment from a guy who said, "Thank you for bringing your friends to us." And I'm like, "Who's us? Who are you?" First comment of a person that I don't know. So thank you, whoever it was that left that comment. I don't remember your name. I like your comment though.